home-based and diaspora debate, we just weaken ourselves. We divert the issue because then the issue now gets lost, the agenda, and all that becomes the issue is people in the diaspora. Yet people in the diaspora, what our government has shown is they contribute hugely to the economy of the Gambia. If you look at remittances, they constitute a huge percentage of our GDP. There are a lot of Gambians at home in a lot of initiatives, activities, which are jointly undertaken by them and the government outside, or if not fully funded or initiated by somebody in the Gambia, and which is their right and their duty to contribute to the development of the Gambia. So the 3 years issue, for example, or 5 years, it should just be seen as Gambians coming around 3 years, or 5 years, based on their own opinion or agenda. There are folks in the Gambia who do not support 3 years. There are some who support it. There are folks in the diaspora who support the 3 years agenda, and there are those who oppose it. And the same goes for the 5 years agenda as well.
For instance, relating to our 3 years, we have seen prior to their demonstration, some of the top executives landed at the Banjul International Airport. But still, some are saying that people like Kingsport should also join the show, especially now we've been seeing that their top executives are undergoing court hearing every day. So do you think it's ideal for Kingsport to sit at the US or come back to the country?
No, that is nobody's business. That's entirely Kingsport's business.
Yeah, but a lot of people are saying that he's the one triggering the whole issue.
I think that is false. Kingsport, I don't know him, like, personally, and a host of their other members, they are Gambians, and they have a right to promote any agenda in the Gambia. And I think that is what they are doing. You can disagree with their agenda, fine, but to use their location as a basis to disagree with them, I think that's a serious, distortion of the facts and a violation of their rights, because he doesn't have to come to the Gambia. But to come or not to come, that's entirely his business. That's his choice. So I don't see why that should be an issue for anyone. But Kingsport, any other person has a right to support any particular agenda, and you don't have to say, because I support this, so I have to travel all the way. What if he doesn't have the means to travel to the Gambia? Yeah, but again, I don't want to try to give him any excuses or reasons, because that is entirely his business. Yes, all that I care about is that Kingsport, like any other Gambian, at home and abroad, has a right, all right, in his opinion or her opinion, to support a particular agenda or oppose a particular agenda.
So what of to those saying that the period between 3 years and 5 years is so very limited, or not even that much long, that the movement could have waited until the election instead of triggering the protest, which of course led to a lot of violence?
Again, a matter of opinion. America is having elections this year, and they were trying to impeach their president.
The president.
Luckily he passed it yesterday. But if the Senate had voted against him, it means within the very 12 months, So for me, I support 3 years. That is that Barrow should honor the 3 years. That's what I support. Okay. And so for me, the matter is gone now, because 3 years would have been 19 January. We've passed it. So as far as I'm concerned, I won't protest about it. I'm not going to do anything again to get him out, because the period that he needs to stay has elapsed. Constitutionally, he can stay up to 5 years, which is legal. He will continue. Just that he does not have the recognition, that he should get from me. He's not going to get it because he has betrayed his word. And I'm not going to trust a leader, a political leader, who betrays his word.
His words.
So for me, that is it. But then, for someone who feels he needs to step down, that is also his right entirely to pursue by all peaceful means to make him respect the 3 years. If someone wants to wait because it's just 2 years to
the election,
that is also your choice. You can support. No problem with that. So as I said, I'm not a member of 3 years shutdown movement or 5 years movement, but I support both of them. But they should have their right to protest,
to exercise.
So they also have their right. But to bring the argument as okay, it is not necessary now. I mean, the 3 years to 5 years so short. There's no. What the reason why it is important we emphasize on these 3 years is because we have to end politics of deception. Because politics of deception, of lies, a leadership that betrays its own commitments, its own agreements, is a threat to democracy. It's a threat to good governance. It's a threat to our human rights. When you have elected officials give commitments on their own and then come back to ignore, to violate those commitments on their own, sooner or later they would even violate our constitution. And that means they are going to violate our rights. And that means they are going to interfere, with the rule of law. And when that happens, you cannot have democracy and good governance. So for me, it's on that principle that I insist that the Barrow government should respect 3 years and resign. So that for today and tomorrow, it should be clear that in this country, never again are we going to have such leadership of deception, so politics of deception.
So if Barrow should resign today in honor of the 3 years agreement, do you think there should be an election or someone's, the country should be entrusted to someone until 2021? Because I mean the IEC has already made it clear that they don't have that funding to conduct another election again.
I disagree with the IEC. The IEC is a state institution mandated to conduct public elections, and every year a budget is provided for them.
So do you think in that regard politics could be playing there?
Well, I don't know why they said that, because anytime election can erupt. Right now, election has erupted with the death of Honorable Dembaso of JDC, National Assembly member. So we're going to have a by-election in his constitution, and IEC cannot say we don't have money. So election can come anytime, and this is why money is given to IEC every year. So they have to make sure they have the money, and they cannot postpone our election because they don't have money. All right. So but that actually is even beside the point. The point is, we have a constitution which says when the president resigns, the vice president takes over. So the rule of law is clear as to how to deal with this. But what all of this indicate is just the dishonesty of the president. That we are in this situation. Because if Barrow is honest to himself and to Gambians, the very first day he took office in January 2017, knowing full well his own commitments, his manifesto, what he wrote in his manifesto, he would have positioned himself in a way that is going to make it possible that by the end of the 3 years, he would have been packing to leave after having conducted elections and conducted the necessary legal, institutional, constitutional reforms, so that we usher in the Third Republic, a brand new republic, on stronger democratic foundations. Yeah. So by January 2017, one would have imagined within the first 6 months we would have set up a TRRC he would have set up a constitutional review commission, so that within the first 2 years they would have done their work. But as we get to the third year, which will be his final year, he would have gone into a referendum of a new constitution. By that time, he would have also done the necessary legal reforms, institutional reforms. But Barrow deliberately failed to do that. Since January 2017 to date, there has been no legal reform in this country. Constitutional reform, only one or two, when he changed the age limit for the president. Yeah. So there are many provisions of constitution he could have done. He could have set up the CRC way back before, June or July 2017. But you wait until the end of 2018 to do that. So you look at institutional reforms. Since 2017 to date, no institutional reform. The military security sector reform, you talk about it, but the government armed forces is not reformed. The NIA is not reformed. The police is not reformed. Immigration, prisons, they are not reformed. Civil service reform, nothing is done. So deliberately, you sit there, naturally the 3 years will elapse and you would not do anything. And you cannot now say, because my agenda is not finished, because you refuse to implement your agenda at the right time.
So are you meant to say that Barrow is responsible for the problem of 3 years, Jotna?
Absolutely. So he is the cause of all of this chaos in our country right now, due to his dishonesty and bad leadership.
But some are saying that people should have patience, because Barrow is only a president, and he had made, sorry for that, and he had made it clear that at the Brikama rally that he is not stepping down, that whether we like it or not, he is our president until 2021. And of course, during his tour too, he has made it clear that he is not stepping down just to please his political opponents. So people are saying that, the president is always power, so people should have just understood that people should have that patience to wait till 2021 and change, bring in whosoever they want. Yeah. So do you believe that the president is powerful than the citizens?
Oh, certainly not. The people are the power, the basis of the power that the president claims. But that became a rally. All that he said, all good confirm the dishonesty and the bad leadership of President Barrow. That he has no objective whatsoever to serve the best interests of the Gambia. So once again, just as we saw with Yahya Jammeh, we have seen again another Gambian take a leadership position at the most critical time in our history, with people having rightly high expectations and people giving him all the goodwill and all the support to enable him to make the country succeed, only for him to betray the country. So when Jammeh staged his 1994 coup, there was widespread support for him. When they set up a transitional agenda for 2 years, there was widespread support. Governments are very willing, obedient people. They give all the support to that military regime. That he himself said they will step down after 2 years. They will go back to the barracks and claim, in fact, he was a soldier with a difference. But only for us to see him renege, abandon those commitments, and then play a game where you mobilize people, you draw dishonest people around you so that they create the impression, the agenda that the people want you to stay. So we saw similarly in the days of Jammeh in 1996 how communities were mobilized, elders were mobilized, religious leaders were mobilized, youths were mobilized to come to State House to tell him to put off his uniform and start as a civilian president. So similarly, Barrow also 1996 or 2016 was a very exceptional period in our history.
So
we went to vote,
Is Gambia going back to those dark ages again?
I think we are going back to those dark ages, and and Gambians need to be alert to this. One can sit here to entertain some feel me good ideas. Gambia can go back to dictatorship. You cannot have another Yahya Jammeh here. And I'm like, do you know history? Do you know human society? Now, who would have imagined after 3 years, currently 2 radio stations will be closed down? That 4 journalists would be intimidated. All right? That 8 Gambians would be, dumped in mile 2 for merely protesting. Now, if these things can happen, that a gunman could be arrested, detained, and held incommunicado without access to his family and friends, being jumped from one police station to the other. Effectively being kidnapped. If that can take place right now, what makes you believe that this trend, if it continues, we do not stand up to resist? That sooner or later there would not be, torture, which I believe is already taking place. All right, that there would not be enforced disappearances, that there would not be summary executions of Gambians.
And but the arrest of these 137, or some are even saying that 138 people, some are excited about it, but some are celebrating that it's good for them because they are the main cause behind all this trouble. So in other words, the government should in fact prison them, life in jail.
Yeah. So that is also one aspect of society. You will always have individuals who lack the necessary political awareness.
In fact, they have been accused that at the demonstration day, they are the one to cause the violence. But some are saying that, well, even before they could even gather, at their point where they should gather, the government forces started to disperse them, to throw the tear gas on them, so which of course made these people to retaliate on them.
Well, so government needs to investigate, first and foremost, why and how the violence erupted, and who were the perpetrators, and rightly arrest the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Because no one has a right, has a duty to cause violence, to damage property, private or public property. So anyone who does that, you should be held accountable. There's no doubt about that. Now, that said, it is common in democracies, all right, that protests take place and they get violent. You see it in Senegal here. You see it in France, you see it in the US, in Hong Kong, in Ghana. So that happened because human beings can misconduct themselves. But that's why we have law enforcement to investigate. Those responsible are held accountable. But all of that is apart from the fact that citizens have a right to peaceful assembly. Now, you cannot use violence that has erupted in an event like this as a cover to therefore clamp down on citizens simply because they organized that protest. Or, more importantly, you want to destroy a citizen group. You want to damage the right of citizens to protest. But you are using violence as a cover to do that. So the Ghana government, we expect it to do an investigation instead than just jumping on people and arresting them in this manner.
And do you think there will be that meaningful investigation on them?
Well, there should be, because meantime, we've not seen any police officer held accountable. And clearly, some of the security forces acted, with unreasonable force. But we've not had any investigation being announced that, or any police officer being held accountable. So, meaning this is all an attempt by the government to damage citizens' rights, so that you can see, within 3 hours of that protest itself, the Gambia government issued a declaration to ban a group, contrary to the laws of the Gambia. That action in itself indicates that you have a government that is not committed to democracy, to the protection of human rights. So in that instance, and in the society, as I was saying, you always have citizens who lack the necessary political awareness, who lack awareness about human rights, about good governance. And so for them, all they see are partisan issues. I support this president. Anyone who criticizes this president, regardless of what you say, you are an enemy. Anyone who protests, regardless of what the issue, you are an enemy. We've seen that during the days of Jawara, during the days of Jammeh, and we have seen the same thing. And we have even seen people change. I mean, there was a time since this Barrow government started, I only play one role, that is to hold them accountable. But there was a time some people were insulting me for doing that. With time, today they celebrate me for holding them accountable. Because at that time, all they saw was that this is our Barrow, all right, this is our government. So whatever you say doesn't, regardless, you are just an enemy. And all other adjectives. But today, when things turn around, you can see that they now come to support, the work that I do. So that indicates that those individuals like that, they lack political awareness. They lack honesty. Those values necessary to make our democracy strong. So it's okay. You will therefore hear people say, yeah, it's good for they should lock them, in the bottom of the sea. But you can understand, the kind of people who say those things. Someday, they themselves will come to, another issue will arise, and you will see them take a different position, and you begin to wonder, but we are not the one who was saying this some time ago, but that also explains the nature of our society.
And in fact, a lot of people are even accusing them that the majority of the 3 years Jotna movement are from the United Democratic Party. That's why we have seen when Dabo did his press conference, he said that President Adam Barrow should have honored the 3 years agreement. And initially, you have seen when he was in the government, of course, he was supporting the 5 years, that 5 years, 3 years, let Barrow do his job. So a lot of people are even saying that that press conference could have been the moment for Dabo to calm down these people, because, I mean, by then the country was at the crossroad. So Dabo could have calmed these people, because they are claiming that the majority of them are from his party. So do you think at that point in time was an ideal moment for Dabo to do that announcement?
Yes, and I think Dabo should have stood by his
words.
So therefore, I totally disagreed with him when he said Barrow should serve 5 years. And yes, that's what the Constitution says. But they are not talking about the Constitution here. We're talking about a political leader who campaigned on a particular agenda and got elected. And so political decency would require that both Dabo and Barrow and all the coalition leaders stand on that position, that he should serve 3 years and organize themselves, because it was also a coalition, organize themselves to do this. But it's sad to note that actually Dabo himself and UDP, who are the greatest beneficiaries of this change, became also one of the leading perpetrator of this betrayal, by supporting Barrow to stand for 5 years by any means, and and standing by that, calling Barrow is our Barrow, and until such a time when they themselves fell out with Barrow, and now begin to say we will support.
He championed the 3 years movement.
Yes, I think they did not exercise political decency there, and leadership there. I think at the very beginning, Dabo should have insisted that Barrow should stand for 3 years with the entire UDP and the rest of the other parties. But that did not happen at that time. So that when things changed, they had stood for 5 years. So when things changed, and they went back to the 3 years.
3 years.
I don't think that's helpful to both the party themselves and to the country as a whole. And that is one of the problems, reasons for the problem that we have right now. And I hope, Dabo himself, but also all the other political party leaders, if there's any time for them to demonstrate leadership, it's now.
It's now.
Yes, I think what is happening right now, the greatest shortcoming our country is facing is leadership deficiency. Our country is being agitated. There's sort of, is a vibration around, and in many ways. Actually, not just 3 years, 5 years, but the way and manner the entire governance of the country is conducted is far below standard. And that is the reason why there is so much sectarianism, polarization in our society. Bringing out tribalism, intense partisanship, and that personality politics. And therefore, this is the moment that I think our political leaders like Dabo, like Halifa, like Syria, like OJ, and Mama Kande, and all of them with Barrow, should call each other and find a solution to salvage this country. Because right now the country has no direction, there's no leadership at all, and the more this trend continues, it threatens our peace. There's a lot of resentment anger brewing up. The fact that the APRC itself or you could have Gambians continue to celebrate, to entertain Yahya Jammeh, to hold a rally in the middle of the Gambia to demand not just the return of Jammeh, but to even deny, to mock, the atrocities committed by the regime and to mock victims, to ridicule victims. You are directly threatening national security and national unity. So this is the moment that our political leaders, including those APRC leaders, Fabak Tombonjak, need to call each other, all right, and talk about how do we salvage this country, because we are definitely crashing. We are going off track. And if anyone should do that, it is our political leadership that should call each other, abandon their egos, their political interests, personal interests, and come together to salvage this country.
You just mentioned leadership deficiency, of course, which will take us to our next topic. Recently, I've been seeing that a lot of coalition leaders are taking the responsibility and the blame, the likes of Mai Ahmed Fati and Oji Jallo. So the Gambians are saying that the coalition leaders of 2016 failed the Gambia itself, because if at all they have been stick to their word, like you mentioned earlier on, all these two problems wouldn't have happened, the 3 years or the 5 years. So in a nutshell, Mr. Jobarteh, do you think the Gambians should have any more confidence with any of these leaders?
Well, so far...
from Madam Tambajan to Dr. Aissatou Toure, Mai Fati, Oji Jallo and Ahmad Ba.
Yeah, I think they have injured their own credibility in the eyes of Gambians. But they can rescue this damage. They can repair this damage.
Don't you think it's too late?
No,
because
it's too late.
OJ said they are of course taking the responsibility. My party is even calling for national dialogue, but some people are saying that it's already too late. They should have done that 2 to 3 years back.
It cannot be late. It cannot be late because Gambia is an ongoing concern, business. Gambia is not closed yet, and these are the leaders that we have there at the front. And they can make mistakes, and we can disagree with them. But as human beings, we should have the ability to correct ourselves, so they can correct themselves. And I wish they realize that soon enough, so that they begin to put themselves on that path of correcting themselves in order to salvage the country.
But do you think that correction would be so much easy? Because if you look at the leaders among themselves, there have been a lot of inconsistency. I think so far the only consistent group it's been PDOIs that day.
Yes.
So do you think for them to come together to correct that damage which is already been done, would that be easy?
Well, easy or difficult all depends on their awareness of the need to correct themselves and their commitment to that agenda to correct themselves, and then to take the practical steps, the right steps to achieve that objective. So, so I won't say it will be easy or difficult. It all depends. Yeah, but I think all what they need to do, first of all, to take responsibility. Those who supported Barrow for 5 years, knowing full well Barrow, agreed for 3 years to use an agenda, but they went ahead to support him for 5 years, should take responsibility. But also all others also should take responsibility, because we cannot say it's up to Barrow. No, political parties cannot talk like that, because you are the parties that constituted the coalition that put forward a candidate who had an agenda which you, in a manifesto, which all of you came around to support, to campaign for that person. And when that person wins, you also take responsibility for the conduct of that candidate as a president. So all the parties should therefore take individual responsibility, collective but also individual responsibility to make sure that the agenda I support stands. So we cannot say, therefore, if Barrow is the president, it's up to him to choose this or that. No. Because you contributed to make that Barrow a president by campaigning for him, by convincing people that with this man, with this agenda, we will salvage this country. So when we get to that day, when we have now, the people have done what they're supposed to do by voting for him, the parties cannot wash off their hands that is a demonstration of poor leadership as well. All right. So there are those who took proactive steps to damage the people's trust. Like UDP, like GMC itself, because they all stood there when Barrow was appointing ministers, sacking ministers. Which coalition party said, "I'm opposed to this, therefore I'm resigning from the coalition"? Nobody said. But they went to benefit from it. They kept silent about it, knowing full well Barrow was violated their own coalition MOU, which set up an institution and a process as to how to constitute the government. And Barrow completely abandoned that process. But no party came out to say, "Oh, Mr. Barrow, this is not what we agreed. So go back to what we agreed, otherwise I'm going to resign." But until today, I have not seen any party, all right? I have not seen any party that has said, "We have resigned from the coalition." So for me, technically, they are all part of the coalition still now. It is their president. They put up that president for us. If Barrow was on a Liberal Party ticket, for example, if Barrow was elected on a UDP ticket, or DOI ticket, or GDC ticket, we will hold DOI or UDP to account for the conduct of their president. But Barrow was elected as an independent, but on the platform of all these parties. So therefore, we have to hold all the members of that platform account for the conduct of that president. So nobody among them can claim that they have no obligation or duty
towards it,
towards Barrow, whether to respect 3 years or 5 years. No, you have a responsibility to make sure Barrow respects it. If not, state it very well, that you are opposed to Barrow failing in that regard, and then you are therefore resigning from the coalition. But no one did that.
If you just look sometimes back, about 2 months back, there have been attempts for dialogue, of course, to engage the 3 years journey and the 5 years journey. One was organized by Peace Africa, which of course they invited the member of President Adama Barrow and his members, but of course he didn't show up. So a lot of people were angered that day. So they say President Barrow is not ready to make peace with the movement.
Oh, definitely. I think for me, Barrow is a huge liability, for the country, and but also Barrow needs to advise himself. He's not on a path that is going to serve him.
But he's having a lot of advisors.
Yes, you can have wrong advisors, or advisors who give you wrong advice, and apparently it appears he does not only have wrong advisors and advisors give him wrong advice, but he himself is advising himself wrongly, and that is going to severely impact on the country, but it is also going to severely impact on himself. There is enough lessons in the Gambia, in the rest of the world, that ultimately this republic belongs to the people. That you as one person, one man, one woman, you don't have power over and above all others. Otherwise, Yajama would be sitting here right now. Otherwise, even Jawara would be sitting here right now. But they were removed. So, but Barrow needs to factor all of these issues to realize that even if he is to serve for one day, that in itself is an honor, it's an invaluable honor for any citizen to serve your country. To be elected by your fellow compatriots, among 2 million people, to elect you to serve for even one day. That is such an honor for me, for any person who is decent, who is conscious, sober, all right, would satisfy you. So, is Barrow looking at the presidency, his election, in terms of that? That, look, even one day, I'm satisfied. So within that one day, I will do to the best of my ability, with honesty, with decency, with humility, to serve these people, knowing full well we still have a long way to go, and I'm not going to be there forever. So that even if I live today and tomorrow, future generations will always claim, yes, there was a time, there was a president called Adama Barrow who did this. And people are proud of that. But again, if you don't do well, generations also will say it, that indeed there was a man called Yaya Jammeh who was here, and so you will still be an example. So it's about being a good example, a bad example.
But I am not sure if we can see that sign any moment from now on, because I mean, if you look at President Adam Barrow, especially with the advent of his own new political party, so that shows that his willingness, his ability, to even go for beyond 2021 election. Some are even chanting during his campaign, Barrow for 15 years, Barrow for 10 years, Barrow for 5 years.
I mean, as I said, I think Barrow right now is intoxicated with power. And he has folks around him who continue to inject him with that poison to stay in power by any means, even unnecessary. But that is also his destruction, sooner or later. Yes, I mean, public office is not anybody's personal property. It's not anybody's father's property. Public office is public property, and nobody can play with public property, for free, till the end of time. No, a day of reckoning will come. So, but Barrow, if I have to advise Barrow, really, maybe right now to step down 3 years, that is gone, because the 3 years is gone already. But to realize that for his future security and peace, and for the peace and security of the Gambia, to abandon any idea about seeking office in 2021 or creating a political party. Rather, to go back to his manifesto. He has a very good manifesto with clear action points to see, no matter how late it is in the day, to work as hard and as fast as possible to seek to do the necessary legal, institutional, and constitutional reforms to take the country to the end of the 5 years, to ensure that we have a referendum, so a new constitution is in place, so that we have elections, and which he oversees, ensure that it is fair, it is free, it is transparent, it is credible, and he hands over. That's the advice I can give him, and call it, quits from there.
But do you think that that decision for Barrow would be likely? I mean, after seeing Barrow forming his new political party, spending millions on it to form it, so do you think Barrow will easily give up the party like this?
No, well, I won't speak for him. All what we can do is to advise him, to give our opinion in the way I see things, and to suggest to him what I think is in his best interest and what is in the best interest of the Gambia. Now, it is up to him to make a choice, But as I said, for me, if he wishes to leave a legacy that Gambians today and tomorrow will be proud of, but more importantly, if he wishes to live a life of peace, of calm, with himself in this country, it is important that he positions himself on a path that serves the best interest of the country, and not his own selfish interest as it is right now. Right now, he is focused on only his own selfish interests, and that is certainly going to backfire. And when that happens, right now, Yaya Jammeh, because he was pursuing his own personal interest, selfish interest, it became apparent that he cannot even stay in the Gambia. His vice president is here, as I said. You don't even hear anybody talk about. He's become a non-entity. All right, and that tells you public office is not a joke. You don't play with public office. You don't play with the people's mandate. You don't play with national sovereignty. Yaya Jammeh tried to do that here, and he's paying the price for it. You heard the Minister of Justice says, Barrow's own Minister of Justice, that if Yaya Jammeh steps here, he will be arrested
immediately.
Right? And that is it. So Barrow also got to realize that in that office where he sits is public office. That mandate he has is public mandate. That power he has is people's power. And so he should protect that mandate, that power, and use it as a tool to serve the best interests of the country. And that is the only way he can guarantee his the peace and stability and the calmness of his life today and tomorrow in the Gambia. But right now he's engaged in a journey that takes him nowhere. That will only bring ridicule and disgrace and hardship for him, if not today but tomorrow.
So you are saying that Barrow's formation of his own political party is nothing but selfish interest?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, but he is saying that he's doing it for the love of the country. I mean, his national development plan and the good vision he had for the Gambia.
Well, I'm sure when Barrow says that he fools no one but himself. For a political leader to stand on a platform and speak in high-sounding slogans, to spread, people-centered slogans, messages, to claim self-righteousness. That has been happening in the world. When at the back of their mind they know what they are saying is all false. So Barrow knows the creation of his party to continue to serve this as president after 5 years, to stand for another 5 years, is not for the good of this country. If that was the case, we would have seen from January 17 a certain kind of urgency, of commitment, of seriousness in him and his government to address the fundamental challenges of the Gambia. But his government is incredibly corrupt. There's no accountability in his government, clearly showing that he is not committed to protect the vital interests of the country. From donations that he himself received and claimed to be anonymous donors, we have money sent to the Gambia in his wife's account. We have contracts, local and foreign companies plundering our natural resources as they wish. And many more malpractices, perpetrated in his government. He has demonstrated he has no regard for the rule of law, for democracy. Otherwise, we would not have protesters in jail. We would not have a citizen group banned. We would not have a radio station closed. In fact, we would not have a situation where citizens who want to protest are confined to the bush and given 2-3 hours to express themselves. This is democracy. So, if you respect democracy, value democracy, you respect human rights, and you respect the Constitution, which says every Gambian has a right to freedom of assembly. A bunch of Gambians want to express themselves, and they want to express in Banjul. Why do you refuse to let them do so there? What security are you talking about? So clearly, you know very well there are no security challenges, there are no issues. All that you don't want is that citizens to exercise their fundamental rights. So you decide to therefore push them to the bush and give them a few hours. I recall, in fact, in 2017, Occupy Westfield, citizens who want to express their disagreement, their grievance about delivery of public services like electricity, corruption and the environmental damages, you refuse them a permit. Why? Then we had the Dafadai protest. All attempts were done to stifle that protest. The organizers were called to State House for close to 8 or more hours. The entire cabinet, security chiefs, to talk to a bunch of young boys and girls who want to protest. I mean, what kind of government is that? As if when those people protest, the sky is going to fall. Then you had no choice because those boys, sober as they were, stood their ground. Then you decide to say, okay, now you can go and protest, but protest on a back street, this little street behind Westfield. And for only 1.5 hours. That tantamount to denial. I mean, why would you subject citizens to as if we are in apartheid South Africa? We are in Palestine.
Don't they think to the limitation of the space and time given to the protesters could be also the government concern for the security and violence that the demonstration might turn to riots?
No, there is no security issue whatsoever. Because the Gambian government, until today, from 2007 to 2016, they've never issued a security alert. They've never issued a report to indicate, identify any elements inside or outside of the country threatening the security of this country.
Because they are taking the reference from the Brikama Area Council protest,
So
of course, which led to a lot of damages and suddenly the burning down of Mr. Mbub's house.
So the Brikama Area Council, I mean, Occupy
Brikama Area Council.
Just like the spontaneous protest in the case of Serakunda. You see, let the IG do an analysis of protest from 2000 to 2019 to look at how many protests became violent, all right, or not. How many of those were given a permit or not given a permit or suppressed by the police? So that when you do the analysis, you realize that protests get violent here because one, you refuse a permit, two, you suppress it even before it started. So that April 2000, there wasn't a permit. The students want to have a peaceful protest, but then you suppress it. You know, you attack them even before the students were able to gather, and you shoot them. That's why protest erupted. You look at Brikama, there was no permit, but even before the people assembled, the paramilitary forces were already stationed, and that is what it caused. But you look at Brikama, the entire day, you will not see a report of any public office vandalized, any shop looted, or any vehicle burned down. Yet the police were running battles with people in the streets of Brikama, throwing tear gas. So meaning our people are peaceful people. That those people wanted to protest, they did not protest to burn down Brikama. And they are not irresponsible youths. They are responsible youths. And when you denied them, that is to submit that petition to the area council, eventually, in fact, you couldn't contain them. They even had to now submit their petition to Brikama. So why didn't you leave them to do their protest in the first place? To avoid that the damage that you've caused in Brikama. That in fact, until today, some of those protesters, their leaders are asked to go to report to the police in violation of their liberty. Until today, Brikama police has seized their T-shirts, their legal properties. Why? It's abuse. Now you come to Serakunda. Why did the protest erupt? Because of police brutality. All right, and Golden Bob's house was burned down, and I think Bakoda police station was ransacked. But apart from that, have you seen a report of any other public office burned down, or any other private compound burned down, or any shop looted in Serakunda?
So Serakunda black market people were complaining heavily that during the protest, some of course ran to the mobile shops inside the market to loot some of the shops too.
Well, we have not seen any reports of that. The state has not, they charged some people because of that riot. In the charge sheet, nothing like that came out, looting of shops. So, what happened? All right. So, the state, therefore, or the IGP, the Gambia government, cannot come and give us false narratives just to scare citizens with the intention to seize the rights of citizens. That security. There is no security issue here in this country. If there is any security issue, it is the government threatening the security of this country. Do the security sector reform that we need to do. That is what we need to do to enhance our security. Protect human rights to enhance security. Ensure good governance, combat corruption. All right? Make sure public institutions deliver public services efficiently. This is how you secure a society. This is how you protect national security. But you allow corruption to perpetuate all over the place. I mean, public services, public institutions are not delivering. People are paying tax. All right? I mean, you refuse to do security sector reform. Until now, this country is filled with checkpoints all over. You want to go to Banjul right now, there's a checkpoint at the bridge. What is the point of that checkpoint? Other than to just infringe on people's freedom of movement. It has no value there whatsoever. But you put all these checkpoints all over the country, you refuse to do the necessary security sector reform, and to our amazement, with utter disappointment, you go and bring back a former IG and Sabaji back into the police. What's your problem? So if anyone is threatening the security of this country, it's none other than President Adama Barrow.
So what of the countless attacks that has been going on, of course, at night in the areas of Ibo Town, Serakunda, Talinding? People have been dropped, for some they will steal their mobile phones, some they will attack them with a knife.
So the richest country in the world.
And people are in fact saying that during Jammeh's time, of course, he employed bulldozers at night, to run. But nowadays there is nothing like bulldozers. There is nothing like any security forces running.
The bulldozer unit was illegal and oppressive. Was just there to harass people. All right, in the name of fighting crime. But crime, as I was trying to say, in the most democratic country, in the richest country in the world, any country. Crime takes place, burglaries or pickpocketing and all of those things, armed robberies, they take place. But this is why we have law enforcement. This is why we have the courts. Now what we need to do is smart policing, not to mount checkpoints or create illegal units like bulldozer, create illegal detention centers, or create units like anti-crime unit, and then let them operate at liberty. To abuse rights in the name of fighting crime. That is not going to help, because what history has shown during Jammeh's time, and even in the case of anti-crime, the many reports we've also received, you realize that a lot of these criminals also work in collaboration with some of these crime units or security forces. So in effect, they are combating crime but also generating crime. Yeah. So, and all that is because you have a government, you have a law enforcement agency that is not setting high standards, that is not engaged in smart policing, that is not engaged in accountability of its officers and units. So that is what we need, and this is why security sector reform is so critical that we have. But crime will take place in any society you go to.
So what do you think is the best response to that?
Well, the response to that is a security sector reform. Yeah, we need a security sector reform, because not just in the past 22 years, but since independence, our security institutions in this country, in the first place, the mentality is not that they are servants of the people. They are there to protect the rights of the people. So, their whole approach is the employment of force, of violence on citizens. You don't argue with the military, maybe now, but during Jammeh days, you want to question a paramilitary officer or a soldier at a checkpoint, you could be manhandled severely. Yeah? But you look at the name, the Gambia Police Force itself. For example, just to give you at the simplest level, when you have a law enforcement called Gambia Police Force, a force is force. Force is force. So that name itself tells you there's a need to change even this name, because this name connotes force, violence. It doesn't connote men and women in an institution that is there to serve the people, to protect rights. Does the average Gambian policeman consider himself as a human rights protector? Because a police officer, that is your job, human rights protection. So how do we, reform the police force with a new kind of mentality, message, awareness, all right, orientation that makes the police officer see himself as first and foremost as, a human rights protector, a human rights defender. That you are not a force, you are not there to slap anyone, to detain people by any means and refuse them access to lawyers or their families. That you should not do all of those things. So you need to change the whole culture within the Gambia police force, and the military the same, and so on and so forth. You need to reform the prisons. Yes, people commit crimes and they can be sentenced to prison, but the prison is, you are not sending people to prison because they are condemned. They are undesirable elements or they should suffer. No. The prison should be an institution to make people better. So the conditions in that prison itself need to be excellent. The food, the living conditions, the services that are available in the prison, and so on and so forth. So all of these require that we do a security sector reform. That we don't need to have checkpoints located everywhere in this country.
The country.
Yeah. How do we equip the police with all the gadgets? But at the same time, part of the security sector reform is how do you also raise a certain level of public awareness? So bring efficiency into the police. Do they have hotlines? How efficient are those hotlines? Is that hotline available to every citizen? Do they have vehicles? Do they have motorbikes to be able to, run around the country? There is this concept of community policing. Can we have our police officers on horses? Taking a stroll in our communities, or on bicycles, taking a stroll in our communities. Engaging communities to, build trust among them as a means to combat crime. So there are many ways that, we need to do security sector reform. But ultimately, that is not being done. You look at the military. Barrow is the commander-in-chief. Since 2017 to date, the commander-in-chief has not entered any barracks yet to meet his troops. What kind of commander-in-chief are you? Especially in a country which was under a period of dictatorship, in which the military was both a perpetrator and a victim, severely politicized, so much distrust, mistrust among them. All right? Some have already decided all of those things. If you come as the commander-in-chief, one of the first thing you need to do is establish what they say in the military themselves. Create that esprit de corps between you and your troops. Visit them, talk to them, not the generals, but the rank and file. Go see their living conditions. Go and see their barracks, how they live. Talk to them and hear their concerns. The issues. Give them assurances that you are their commander-in-chief and you stand with them.
Don't you think so? He do send agents?
No. The sending of agents, that will continue forever. Because no commander-in-chief will go to a barracks every day or every week. No. You have a whole hierarchy. You're the commander-in-chief, that's a minister of defense. There is a CDS. There is an army commander, a navy commander, and and the line goes all the way down. So information, of course, is supposed to come. But beyond and above that, the commander-in-chief also needs to have that direct touch with the troops on the ground. Yeah. That no amount of agents or delegation or free flow of information can downplay that. That has to happen. Yes.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Just to remind you all that you're still watching the Government Talents Forum on Government Talents Promotion. You can always watch our programs on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can always do so in order for you to get good information and of course necessary content. Mr. Jobarteh, that will take us to our next topic. We have been seeing that from 2016 up to date, the Gambia have experienced countless of protests, from the Fadoi protests to the two movement, which is the 3 years and 5 years, the victims protest, I am too far, and so on. So do you think that our solution could be a protest?
I hear people say this. Protests are too much.
In fact, people are even saying that the country's whole issue, the reason why we are getting backward every day, or the reason why the Gambia is going back and back every day, it's because the government has entertained the protest.
Yeah, so I hear people say those kinds of things, and it's pretty unfortunate. But more importantly, what it highlights is people's lack of political awareness about their rights, people's lack of understanding what is a democratic republic, and people's lack of understanding of what is popular participation, in building democracy and ensuring good governance. Protest is the lifeblood of democracy. Yeah, and protest is what brings democracy. Protest is what protects accountability and transparency. Protest is what makes public institutions, public officials perform their job immediately. And the evidence is across the world. Yesterday and today, and it will be like that forever. So, in no society can protest be enough or protest be too much. Anyone who says that you are either because you don't support these protests, you support a particular government and you don't want anyone to protest against them, so you say that, or you just lack political awareness to understand the meaning, the value of protest, and so you make those kind of comments. No. Protest is good. And the progress this country has made since 2017 and is protest. It's thanks to protest. The democracy we are enjoying is thanks to protest. It is because people protest against government actions and decisions, and we see the government withdraw. We see the government issue a statement. All right? Citizens protest against it by speaking out against it or refusing it, and we see the government withdraw. Or try to change the narrative again. And that is because of protest. The reason democracy is alive is because of protest. So the moment government stop protesting, rest assured is the quickest way for us to go back to dictatorship. Because when that happens it is when government now will control the narrative, will dominate the space. It is this protest that is making the government not to dominate the space, like how Yahya dominated the space, or any dictatorship. So the political space is for contest. Political parties, the government, the ruling government or party, and then the rest of society. And that space, if you withdraw, you take your step out, somebody will put his step.
Feel it.
And most likely it's government that puts its step there. And the moment the government puts its step there, where will you start? So eventually, government will push all of us out of this space. This was why in the past 20 years we did not have voice. We cannot protest. You are not given a permit. If you do, you are arrested. But it is that protest by Solo Sunday that galvanized, that triggered the whole change that we are talking about today. So who can speak against protest?
But do you think too, it will be very likely or very easy to change people's mentality towards protest? I mean, we have been seeing that even some households will even forbid their children, to take part in the protest, because majority of the governments are meant to organize, understand that protest is only meant to create violence and that space of instability.
Well, it's up to them, these Gambians. Ultimately, each and every one of us, to raise our own political awareness, to realize that you are a sovereign citizen, that the government is an institution to serve you. Public servants, officers, the president, all the way down there, all your servants to serve you. And if you don't hold them to account by protesting or by going to court and other means, rest assured they are going to sit on top of your head until your neck is broken. So who thinks protest is waste of time, or we have too much of it, it's enough now, blah blah, you go ahead. Yeah. But as far as Madi Jobarteh is concerned, protest is what sustains democracy. It's what sustains good governance, not just in the Gambia, but everywhere else in the world. Yes, everywhere else in the world. Every democracy you go to, it is protest that keeps leaders, the government, on its toes. Yes. So we don't have enough protests. In fact, we have very few protests in this country. There are multiple 1001 things that we need to be protesting right now, and we are not protesting. So we don't have protests in this country, as compared to Senegal or Ghana or Nigeria and other democracies around the world. We don't have protests. So those who say...
So are you saying that in addition to all these countless protests, that we even need more?
Yes, we need more protests. We need to protest about, our area councils, how they are plundering our wealth and being inefficient and corrupt. We need to protest about our private companies, that they are giving us poor quality products and services. In this, we need to protest that. We need to protest against sexual violence that is perpetrated, in our homes and communities and offices in this country across the board. Yes, we need to protest, at the lack of opportunities for youth, for women in this country. We need to protest against high taxes, high cost of living in this country. We need to protest against corruption in this country. And that is what will clean this country, as it has done in any other country around the world. So we don't have enough protest yet. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we are not protesting in this country.
We all get that altogether. Mr. Madi Jobarteh said we should have protested, for more important issues. I mean, from the women side to the most of the companies, the private sectors, and other issues. So, if you just have an issue that you think the only way forward is the demonstration or the protest, as Mr. Jobarteh said, then I think you should go and seek a permit. But sometimes we have been seeing that during seeking of that permit, it could even create problem or even further challenges to them. I mean, the government will refuse at the first place, but like if they insist to say that we're going to protest, like the APRC protest, for instance, they've been granted at the last minute. So I think that all prove that the government is never in support of.
They are not supporting democracy, good governance, human rights, but it also shows that the government is lying to us when they say security. Because how can you, a political party? Now this is not even a civil society group. This is a political party. The very pillars of our democracy, governance, is on the political parties. Are the political parties. Because political party, the Gambia is a multi-party democracy. It's political parties that produce the president, who forms the government, that produce National Assembly members, that produce councillors. So the pillars of our democracy, of our governance, are political parties. If anybody should be free to organize in this country, it's a political party, because a political party is a government. They are the ones, political parties run the country. So if any group needs to be really free to, participate to, act anyhow in this country, it's a political party. Now, you have a situation where you have a government who would deny a political party a permit. 24 hours later, you give them a permit. And you claim security. How has the security changed within 24 hours? Or they seek a permit until the last day to that event, you give them a permit.
You grant them.
Yeah. Political parties are not armed groups.
And that too on the basis of limitation.
Right.
I mean, from the time to the speed that they should.
Yeah. So I wish Gambians understand, appreciate what is sovereignty, what is a republic, and then what is a citizen. To realize how this government is blatantly abusing our rights, limiting democracy, interfering with the rule of law in this country by actions like that. So, a whole political party in a multi-party democracy, the political party did not say we are going to buy arms to shoot the government. But we want to do a political activity, a rally, in order to share our programs, our agenda to address national issues with citizens. It is that party that is seeking the mandate of the people to form a government. You say, no, you cannot do that. Then you are really stabbing the heart of democracy right there. So, when they did that to GDC, they did that to APRC, they did it to UDP. When they did that to GDC at the first time, I would have expected, and again that shows the poor leadership in this country, I would have expected all the political parties would all jump up to protest. Why the IG would have the audacity to refuse a political party a permit, In the first place, I don't even understand why a political party would go to seek a permit from the IG for that. So I would have expected all the political parties would rise up against the IG, against the government for such blatant abuse of power. But, so because we let it happen with GDC, we saw they did it to APRC. And we saw they did it to UDP. So it will continue like this. And this is why protest is important, because what this means is we are withdrawing from the space. And the moment we withdraw from the space, then the narrative, the story is now going to be told by one person. And that's dictatorship. So we should not allow this story to be told by one person or one voice. This is why protest is very important. Look, democracy is not produced in the State House. Democracy is not produced in the parliament. Democracy is not delivered by the IGP. Democracy, from the beginning of democracy in this world to today, is delivered by the people.
The citizens.
The citizens. Delivered by the citizens coming out on the streets, occupying public space, boycotting, things like that, including going to court. This is what makes democracy flourish in every society you go to in this world. So anyone who says protest is too much, protest, we don't need protest, and all of those things, condemning protest, that person is enjoying democracy. And not just democracy, that person is threatening his or her own sovereignty and the very survival of this country as a democratic republic. You are threatening that.
Thank you very much for that opinion and for clarification. That will take us to the two recent court cases of Mr. Dabo and of course Yakumba Jete. But first let me just say congratulations, because we are among the people that we are saying that the Yakumba sack by President Adam Barrow is against the constitution, and of course he is not right. But we have been seeing that Yakumba gained the victory out of that. So what do you think this signify, or that signal this is signaling to our new democracy?
The state as a whole has a duty to uphold democracy and good governance. That is by upholding the rule of law. And one of the key, organs in that function is the judiciary, the Supreme Court particularly. And so for the Supreme Court, therefore, to take that kind of a decision is highly welcome, and their decision is very right, because if you understand the very concept of a democratic republic, you would realize that in a democratic republic in which there is separation of powers among the three organs of the state, therefore any attempt by any organ to infringe or limit or interfere with another organ is a threat to democracy and to the republic. And so, just because the president appointed or nominated a person to become a member of the National Assembly, therefore should have the right, the authority to withdraw that person, would be a direct threat, undermining of separation of powers, and therefore undermining the independence, the authority, and the credibility of the National Assembly. Especially if you consider that in our case, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker are all elected from the nominated members. So that effectively, if the President could have that ability to remove a nominated member, it means the President can effectively, therefore, remove a Speaker.
The Speaker.
And appoint a Speaker. And if that is the case, Speaker as the head of the Parliament, therefore that Speaker could be functioning to serve the interests of the President by manipulating that Parliament towards that end against national interest. So for me, when the President removed Yakumba, I felt a personal threat to my life by that action alone, because that is the kind of action where public institutions are transformed into weapons. Because when the Parliament is such as we had on the Jame, that Parliament whose primary function is to check the executive. The executive is the one that controls the military, the intelligence, the police, the prisons, who carry weapons. That's huge power. Whoever is in charge of those institutions needs to be checked. And the primary institution to check them is the Parliament. Where you now have a situation where that Parliament is unable to check the executive, then it means that executive could use those institutions, the police, the military, the intelligence, and the weapons they have to kill you and me. And that is what we saw on the job. NIA became a torture chamber. The military, he removed people from there, make them junglers. The police, he give them orders, they will detain you, arrest you, the junglers, they dump you in a police station. Even the SO does not know that why you are dumped in this place. They became holding centers, against people's rights. So, if one understood, therefore, the meaning of a democratic republic, of separation of powers, of the role of these three organs and their powers, and you see an action that Barrow did, for me, that is the killing of the republic. So I felt a personal threat to my life that if the Supreme Court had ruled in favor of the president, then for me I would have declared the Gambia dead, because that would be, formally introducing dictatorship in this country. So I'm happy the Supreme Court ruled as they ruled, but I'm sad that the Supreme Court had to wait for almost 1 year. The Supreme Court is not a simple organization. The decisions that are coming from the Supreme Court, they touch on the very heart of our republic, and those issues should not wait. So I am very saddened and very unhappy that the Supreme Court failed to take this decision at the very day this matter was brought to them, but had to wait for 1 whole year. And the damage is too much, because Barrow illegally appointed somebody to replace him, Yakumba. Now that person may have been working somewhere. He may have resigned to become a National Assembly member, receiving salary.
So, like you rightly mentioned, you are happy, but at the same time, you are sad.
Yes,
sad.
Yes, sad for the but also sad for that. I think it's Bakari Gassama or something. For the Gassama, but also sad for Yakumba, because Bakari now has been put in a very difficult position, because for 2 years you must have abandoned a lot of activities to become a National Assembly member.
So what do you think is fair? Will be Fode's fate from now on?
Yes, I don't know.
I mean, should Barrow create another position for him, or?
Well, I will not suggest anything to Barrow. That is him. But the point is, Fode should be made to return the money that was paid to him, because the position he occupied was illegal. So the Supreme Court, and I hope the government itself will go ahead to make sure there is accountability. But at the same time, for Yakumba, not just this decision, but this decision also would have caused a lot of social and economic damages to her, and she needs to be compensated. Yes, because she was gainfully employed in the National Assembly. She must have abandoned other activities she was involved in before she became a National Assembly member. Now that you sack her, you are going to send her back to square one. So she needs to be compensated for the damage that is caused to her.
I mean, like you said, the duration was very, very long, and I know, of course, when the sacking happened, of course, it was intellectual debate. We have seen people like Henry Carroll who were supporting, the president's decision of sacking him, of course, but people like you against it, and we are aware of the fact that you know the Constitution so much, you read it to your fingertips. So, in Fode's case, do you think, I mean, what kind of signal it is sending to President Barrow?
Well, he is not going to have a carte blanche to, do whatever he likes. Yes.
Do you think he's happy with the ruling of the court?
Well, he should be happy. I don't know whether he's happy. He should be happy. But in any case, he should not be sad, because he should know in the first place he acted illegally, unconstitutionally, and that has just been validated. So even if he's unhappy or sad, he should be unhappy against himself for allowing himself to misconduct himself. So he cannot be unhappy or with the Supreme Court. If anything, he should thank the Supreme Court for saving him, because it would mean that his violation of the Constitution would still remain, and sooner or later you'll have to pay for that. So the Supreme Court has saved him, therefore, by stopping him from continuous violation of the Constitution in that regard.
I mean, like I said earlier on, you know Constitution very well, and of course the Constitution has talked about the hiring of these 5 members of the National Assembly. But what in the case of firing them? Do you think, that clause should be remain like this, or it should be changed? Well,
the Constitution provides no provision for the revocation of the members of Parliament. I mean, nominated members by the President.
To fire them?
Yeah, to fire them. There is no clause in the Constitution, and all the clauses that people like Dr. Candy Carroll and all others try to rely on is all false. They are trying to stretch something to an extent that it cannot reach there. And I have argued this multiple times at multiple places that you can't. So there's nowhere it could be done. Our concern may be limited in terms of providing some things, which, for example, the removal of nominated members. The concern provides for a removal of, say, elected members through elections. That is through a recall. But that recall, the concern requires that the National Assembly creates an act of parliament to determine the process. So the National Assembly, since 2007, or 1997, they refused to do that. So right now, you cannot even recall an elected member. All right. Now, other means of removing is like death, for example, or you voluntarily resign. Sort of, the only way the National Assembly members themselves, and which also indicates the poor leadership of our National Assembly members and our political parties, is that the National Assembly, the only constitutional change they initiated is to change that section. I think it must be section 92, around there, that if an elected National Assembly member is sacked by his party or her party, you also lose your seat. So they changed that so that even if you are sacked by your party, you still remain in your seat. This is why when UDP sacked 8 members, they did not lose their seats. They still remain as National Assembly members, as independent members, but not as UDP members.
UDP members.
Before that change, those members would have lost their seats. But National Assembly members, they changed that because they want to protect their own security, their tenure. When they could have gone further to create an act of parliament about recall of members, to create other provisions to deal with nominated members, because nominated members, you cannot recall them because you did not vote for them. So there's no recall process for nominated members. But we could have a provision to deal with how do you recall or remove nominated members, since they are not elected. But there's no provision like that, so they cannot be removed. I'm happy in the new draft constitution, the nominated members are removed. They are all together. Because really, as a democratic republic, we don't need any unelected by the people representative in the National Assembly. Anybody who sits in the National Assembly should have mandate from the people to sit there.
You mean through election?
Through election.
Because nomination from the president could also mean that the nominated members have to dance to his tune.
Right. So that is a colonial practice. In the evolution of our democracy or governance, in this country, in the colonial period, they had a legislative council assembly or council at the time, in the 40s, which began as a Banjo Legislative Council, which became later BCC. But after the 1962 elections, we had a legislative council, sort of like a parliament, and there the governor would nominate certain sections of the population, including the British ex-party that were here. So that was the practice that we went with in the 1965 Constitution, in the 1970 Constitution, and then we continued with it in the 1997 Constitution. And we can see, just as in the colonial days, up to today, it has always been abused. Yes, it has no value whatsoever, other than to be used to abuse. The president to abuse. They put people they want to put there regardless. Yeah. So what we need really for people to be elected.
Through election.
Yeah, to come to and sit in the National Assembly. But not, the president nominated people as if the president is the king or the emperor of the Gambia.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, there was the 2 court cases, one from the ECOWAS, which of course he won, and but the other case, the tax case, the commission was set up in 2012 by the former government, which is President Jammeh. But now people are saying that especially the UDP members, without evidences. So if they say that they passed the evidences, obviously it means maybe Dabo couldn't produce any evidence.
I wouldn't say the Supreme Court was manipulated. So some other people can say that. And I think the Supreme Court's ruling probably is based on a very simple law. That is, a commission of inquiry, the Constitution, again, I think Section 200, gives authority to the President to set up a commission of inquiry on any matter of national interest. And so the setting of that commission in 2011 was constitutional. Yes. And I think because the Supreme Court ruled that indeed therefore their findings, that commission has the authority, the power to review the taxes of Dawo, because that was the task of the commission, to review the taxes of selected individuals and companies. And so, and they have that power to do so because it was set up constitutionally, by the president at the time. So I think I stand with the Supreme Court in their ruling. But once that is the case, I have written on this issue, and some people try to even misinterpret me, but I think somehow some of them came to see light because I provided more information. That is to say, much as I would advise Dabo to pay his taxes to comply, because now he has reached the final level, that is at the Supreme Court. But this commission also is a commission that, in my view, was not set up in good faith. It's not legitimate. We have a Gambia Revenue Authority. They have an enforcement unit. They collect tax. And anyone who is in arrears, they are supposed to follow you to pay your tax. Now, at the time this commission was set up, there has not been any report by the GRA or the Gambia government to say tax collection has been a challenge, or there are some category of people or companies refusing to pay tax, so as to trigger the need for such a commission or so. So it was all of a sudden Jammeh who decided to therefore create this commission. And the manner the commission was set up, clearly it was intended to target certain individuals, which to me, one are for political purposes and two are for economic reasons. Including Dabo, because that's what a lot of people are saying, for Jammeh to implicate him. Yeah, well, implicate him and blah, blah, blah. So that was the objective of that commission. So I've never considered 2011, I spoke against that commission in 2011, 2012, that it is illegitimate. It's an attempt by Jammeh, who was the most corrupt person in the Gambia, who had companies that were not paying tax, to create such a commission. As he also created another illegitimate commission, on public servants, if you recall, that even the vice president and ministers all came before that commission as well. And he never came before that commission as president. And he had acquired properties and, was receiving things, but he was the most corrupt, subjecting people to these procedures, but he would not subject himself to it, and he would not abide by the law. So I have considered this commission to be illegitimate. That notwithstanding, it is constitutionally set up, and every citizen has a right to challenge the decision of a commission. And so what Dabo did, I think he was the only one who challenged the decision of the commission up to this level. At the very beginning, 2012, some lawyers also did challenge, but eventually that didn't go forward. I don't know, probably they withdrew or something like that. But he continued to challenge it, from one step to the other, and which is also commendable, because this is a commission, it's an inquiry. They could make mistakes, they could make miscalculations and stuff like that. So if you feel, they are misinterpreting me, that's the nature of civilized society. Go and challenge them. So that is okay. But then, of course, when it reaches a certain level, you will have to comply. And if you fail to comply, then he will be violating the law. So, but the way and manner people, because in this country now, I think every issue, people look at it from a tribal point of view, or a partisan point of view, or a personality point of view. And so you hear a lot of comments, even see some people say, Dabo Kodole, and so, I think those are all political attacks.
At first it was the first lady, but now people are saying that so Mr. Dabo Kodole.
Democratic public environment like that, of course, you will see those kinds of things. But when one fully follows this matter, you will realize that we've not reached yet Dabo Kodole. Probably now is when we need to hold him to account, because he was challenging the decision, all right, at the right place. And now it has reached its final conclusion. So from the day the Constitution, the Supreme Court ruled to today and going forward, now we should hold him to account to pay back.
To pay back the money.
But more than that also, it is important that citizens, regardless of our political preferences, to also look at the national interest, because that commission, the areas that individuals and companies should pay amounted to more than $2 billion. And has all those companies paid or not, and in full? Now, the government never gave any information on that. So we need to ask government to also be transparent, to tell us, have all those people paid, those companies? Where did they pay? Where is the money? Yes. So that we don't just focus on one man and then forget about the rest. The bigger part. Because that was to pay almost $2 million, but we have $2 billion. All right. So that $2 billion, we should not ignore it. So those who are asking for Dabo Kodole, it is important they also ask government Kodole. Right. So that we know whether those people paid or did not pay, and if they did not pay, why did they pay, and why didn't the government enforce? Because if people are putting the way people are putting it, if it is like that, tax evasion for me is the second highest crime a citizen can commit against the state after treason, to refuse to pay tax. So, knowing full well how Jammeh was opposed to Dabo, if Dabo really did not pay his taxes, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, until 2016, Jammeh would let him be flying around this country? No, they would have taken him to court a long time ago. But even Jammeh knew at that time, this is not that issue yet. So I cannot put him to court for tax evasion. So now is the moment that we can now claim tax evasion, or maybe it's not even tax evasion, maybe it's about tax arrears. Because clearly, what the commission indicated, that one was paying taxes. But probably he wasn't paying his full share of the taxes. All right. But he has challenged, like many lawyers at the time, in 2012, they challenged the commission that the commission was miscalculating their taxes. But the third thing is that white paper, because I shared that white paper. Because other people are talking, they've never seen that white paper. And that reminds me, in fact, we should demand that the government give us the full report of the tax commission. We've not seen that. No. It's not public. But we need to see the full report to look at the details of their findings, like the Jammeh Commission. So, but the white paper is there, and I happened to get the white paper. A few days ago, last week, I shared it. And that silenced many people, because then people began to see. Now, in that white paper, you would find a lot of recommendations there. It was not just taxes to be paid, but there are supposed to be institutional, administrative, legal reforms to be conducted. In fact, some people have been suggested, some officials at GRA and other places, to be prosecuted, to be dismissed and prosecuted. But did that happen? Why didn't it happen? So was the white paper really implemented in full, or was it being selectively implemented? So these are all issues that should concern us as citizens, so that we help this country ensure good governance and accountability. But if you want to focus on one man alone, or one person, we would go off track, and that may not serve the purpose. So we should really hold Dabo to account, but let us not forget the big picture. The rest. Yeah, to make sure that ultimately justice and accountability prevail in this country. So what do you think this effect will have on Dabo personally, and of course to his United Democratic Party in general? Well, I would suppose, if I were him, or part of the UDP, that he should hold a press conference or issue a statement to speak to that judgment and to the commission as he understood it. Because what these kinds of things do is they damage your credibility. The public perception about you, they can interfere with it. Which I believe it has already begun, because people are saying that if Dabo cannot pay 2 million, then if the country became his own, then it would have been. So, and those perceptions, as I said, these are perceptions. They can be based on fact, but some can be based on fiction. But in any case, it can damage your credibility in the eyes of the general public. Legally speaking, I think it's a grounds for also to deny one political office to contest for political office.
You meant to say the UDP?
No, not that personally. Tax evasion is one of the criteria to prevent someone from standing for president. But I don't know what happens now. If he pays, would it be a matter of tax? Because the Constitution says if you've been found liable by a commission or a court or so of some misconduct like this. So, but now that, if he goes ahead to pay back, would that sort of notify that disqualification on the basis of tax evasion or not? That is a matter probably legal minds, we'll have to engage in. But again, we are having a new constitution. Depends on, if we really have a new constitution, that is, if we really go to a referendum and have a new constitution, what is it going to say for qualification for president or for public office? So that one would have to look at what the constitution says against what this commission findings are and the Supreme Court ruling, how it affects him. Yeah, so at this moment, I think one can speculate, freely, but then time would tell what actually would be the case. Yeah.
Okay. Then thank you very much for that point. But again, Mr. Jobarteh, a lot of people are saying, especially on the social media, that Mr. Jobarteh, which is you, of course, you are a troublemaker. You will be supporting a lot of these groups, like 3 years under 5 years. But if it's time for the protest, of course, you will not go to the ground. So you only write on Facebook, you advocate for things. So you're causing a lot of questions on citizens' mind. How do you react to that?
So I tell those citizens, Madi has a right to support A and oppose B, to join A or not join B. It's my right. So if anyone has a problem with that, so be it. Yeah. I'm not a member of 3 years Jotna movement. I'm not a supporter of 3 years Jotna movement. I'm not opposed to 3 years Jotna movement. I may share a particular objective with them, that is that Barrow should be held accountable for the 3 years, full stop. But I'm not a member of that group, I'm not opposed to that group.